Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about why this is the key to unlocking the first Power Macs. So as we know, Apple likes using industry standards as long as it's the industry standard according to Apple. So when Apple transitioned from the Apple II to the 68,000 based Macs, the first ones didn't actually have a video connector. But when they did start to have external video out, they use a DB15 connector, and it's got the same number of pins as a VGA, but it's completely different physical dimensions. It's only 2 rows of pins instead of 3, and it's a wider port. Apple introduced that in 1989, so that's a couple of years after the VGA came out. So there was a standard around. Apple chose not to use it for various reasons of their own. But for the next 5 years, almost all Macs came with a DB15 on the back, so you could connect an external monitor. Not content with having a proprietary video connector for their monitors, they did it again in 1994 when the first Power Macs came out. So the 6100, the 7100 and 8100, when they first came out, they didn't have a DB15 on the back, nor did they have a VGA, nor did they have any other standard video port. They had HDI 45, and that connector is what this cable plugs into. So unless you've got a monitor with an HDI 45 cable on the back, and there's only one of those, then you can't plug any other monitor into the very first Power PC Macs. Apple did come up with a cable that did connect your HDI to DB15, so at least you had some backwards compatibility, but you had to buy this separately. Being an industry standard within Apple and nowhere else, there were connectors available that would allow you to convert your DB15 to a standard VGA, and they had a little bit of hardware in them because you need to tell the Apple what resolution the monitor is, and so there's some little dip switches on the adapters that tell the computer what resolution the monitor is going to expect, and you can set those using the little dip switches, and there's a little key on the back of most of the adapters. So DB15 could be converted to a VGA if you needed it to. The only Apple monitor that was available at the time that had an HDI 45 connector on it was the Audio Vision 14 monitor, and that had built-in speakers. And I think one of the reasons they went for the HDI connector is that they could connect both the audio and the video using a single cable. If that idea sounds familiar, then Apple did it again later on with the ADC, so the Apple Desktop Connector, and you'll find that on some of the G4 and G5 Power Macs and some of the monitors that came around at that point. That also didn't last very long in the same way this didn't. This only lasted one generation of Apple Mac. So have I got a Power Mac that I can plug this cable into? Yes, I have. I have a 6100. I've had that for a little while, but because I haven't had a cable, I haven't been able to use it. So let's plug it in, put an Apple monitor on it initially, and maybe a standard VGA monitor with this adapter, and see if we can get anything working. So this is my Power Macintosh 6166. So it's the kind of base level of the Power Macs when they were first introduced. There was a 60 megahertz version, this is a 66 megahertz version, and so it's not quite the base, but it doesn't come with the CD-ROM, and it doesn't have the DOS compatibility card that a lot of them had at that time. It's got typical design language of the time. It's got the colour Apple logo, Power Macintosh, and these sticky labels rather than labels printed onto the actual plastic, so that you can have various models and you could rename them for different markets like Apple like to do. I've got a bezel here covering up the CD-ROM cover, but it has got a couple of chips in it unfortunately, and it's a little bit grubby. I haven't cleaned it yet. It's got a floppy drive here on the right, and it's got the recessed style, which means it's the auto eject but not inject model. Power on-off switch here. This is the era when the Macintosh plastics were pretty poor, which is why it's got some chips in the front. But the rest of the unit seems pretty good. Side pretty boring, still has the feet intact. Round the back we've got a fairly typical complement of Apple ports. You've got power in and pass through, so you can power your monitor directly from it. We've got the AAU. Here we've got an external SCSI, and then we've got this HDI 45 connector that's the video out. Well, then we've got some other ports. We've got 2 serials, ADB and audio in and out. There's a slot here where an expansion card can be put in. So if you have the 486 DOS compatibility card, that exposes the VGA connector on the back there. And then there's 2 little switches here, as per earlier Macs. So it's got networking built in already, so it's pretty good to go. The only thing you can't do is plug an existing Apple monitor into this thing, unfortunately. On the side, nothing to see, very, very straightforward. We do have the tabs on the top for opening up this pizza box style case, same as the LC series. They're not broken off, which is nice. Underneath we have 4 feet. It's lost their rubber bumpers, speaker, power input fan, and then there's another grill here which is probably next to the hard drive to allow some air in, I'm guessing. Identification label, assembled in Ireland, model number M1596. Pretty standard stuff for Apple of the time, nothing really unusual about this system, apart from the fact it is a Power Macintosh, the first ones, and that HDMI connector on the back. Let's have a look inside. Let's see if I can get the cover off without breaking those tabs. There we go. The inside of the cover has got the RF shield on it, and it looks in pretty good condition actually. Worryingly, there's a small amount of corrosion down here at the front. Hopefully there's been no battery leakage in the system. So what have we got inside? We've got power supply back right, floppy drive front right, hard drive front left, motherboard containing the rest of the space. We've got a second hard drive in this system, which is very welcome. And it does have a battery in, but it looks like it's a new one. And it's not in the area where the corrosion was, that's all down here at the front. There's a little bit on the RF shield here. So let's just take that off and find out what's going on. A little bit of corrosion on the inside, a little bit of corrosion on the case. So I think maybe this has had a water drip on it at some point, but it doesn't seem to be anything very significant, luckily. The drives are on sleds, so you can pull up this lever and push them out. Fairly easy for maintenance. In the middle here we have the RF shield and a space for a CD-ROM drive. This one hasn't got a CD-ROM, but it has a second hard drive in place instead. It's an IBM branded one. It's probably not Apple original, and it appears to be not attached to any caddy, so yeah, definitely not original. Floppy drive is original. It's a Sony branded one, as most of them were. Sony made floppy drives for Apple for ages. This has got a date code of 1994 in it, which makes sense. These first Power Macintoshes were released in, I think they were announced in January of 1994 and released in March of 1994. This is a very slightly later model because it's the 66 MHz version, but also the date code on this factory fitted hard drive is February 1995. It's quite dusty in here. There's quite a lot of dust on the cables, but otherwise it looks pretty clean. Most of the capacitors are tantalums. There's a few electrolytic ones in this corner, but they don't appear to be leaking. It's a bit of a spider's web over here. And the battery does look like it's a recent one, not an old one. Under this cable is the processor itself, under this purple heatsink, along with the Apple specific ICs, crystal sound card. There's a Samsung IC there, I'm not sure what that's for. This is the onboard SCSI connector, so the optical drive that was in here must have been a SCSI one at one point, if there was ever one in here. Okay, so that was a quick overview. Let's turn it on. Let's put a cover back on, put a monitor on top, turn it on and see if anything happens. So the monitor we're going to use for this trial is the Apple Performer Plus monitor. It's not a great monitor, it's a very kind of basic monitor in the Apple range, but it doesn't have a DB15 connector, and that's what we need this cable for. Okay, so we have the monitor on, it's receiving power, and then we turn on the 6100. So we have a chime, I can hear the hard drive spinning up. Are we going to get a picture? We are. We have a mouse cursor. Excellent. And we've got a Happy Mac. So these originally came with system 7.1, I think. And being PowerPC, they can run 8 series. And also, I think early 9, maybe 9.1. Something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what's on here. This is System 7, obviously. I'm not sure which mice and keyboard these came with. I've just got the Apple standard desktop keyboard here and the Apple desktop mouse. The keyboard's got a soft power button, but this is a physical power button on the front of this one. So this connector, the HDMI 45, only lasted very, very briefly basically with the introduction of the very first Power PC models. And there was, as I said, there's only one monitor I'm aware of that used this connector. So it's a very short-lived foray into a new display connector. It's not happy about something, but it doesn't say what that something is. Okay, this computer may not have been shut down properly the last time it was used. Okay, well, it's very likely because I'm guessing at some point somebody turned it on to see if it worked, but they wouldn't have had the correct monitor to plug into it. Okay, it says you can use the power key on the keyboard. Okay, so maybe there is some soft power. Okay, the clock is not set correctly. It's still doing something. It's still, those hard drives are still thrashing away. There's a lot of stuff hidden off the side of the screen. Okay, we suddenly had a lot of things appear on the desktop. Okay, Post Office 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 are on the desktop. Then we have some Untitled Folder 4, First Class something here. First Class Alias, Wastebasket, what's this? Retrospect Alias, that's for backups. Post Office 8, and then some weird icon with Wallace, which is the name of the hard drive. FC Access over here, and Wallace TM down at the bottom. This was obviously used in some kind of retail / industrial setting. Okay, let's not worry too much about what that is and where this has come from. Let's find out about this Macintosh. So the colours are looking quite washed out on the camera, but in real life they're actually pretty punchy. I think that's because I've reduced the shutter speed to try and reduce any screen flicker. It's not working that well anyway. Let me see if I can improve this. And there we go, best of both worlds. That's as good as I can get the flicker, guys. But what do we have? We have System Software 7.5.3. Power Macintosh. Total memory 40 megabytes. That's not bad. These came with 16 megabytes as standard, I think, from the factory. So this has definitely had a RAM upgrade. Now at the moment we only have the one hard drive on the desktop. This one that's called Wallace. Are there any other options? So it looks like it's letting us access all these other ones. So these are not network drives, these are actually partitions on the second hard drive by the looks of it. So indeed, this first drive, which is called Wallace, is the main operating system drive, and then we have another drive which says not supported because I think that whatever the post office thing is creates its own partitions on the secondary hard drive. It says they're not supported. Cannot modify a disk in an unsupported drive. So for whatever reason that second hard drive is some kind of data drive with a proprietary partitioning scheme. So we've seen this with a 14-inch monitor. Let's see how high a resolution we can get using that dongle with the other dongle. See if we can use it on a LCD screen. Okay, let's see if we can use this little gadget to convert the HDI 45 to DB15 and then the DB15 to standard VGA, and then we'll plug it into an LCD. Now, the reason we need this is because the way the Mac video system works is you have to specify, or the monitor tells the computer what resolution it's capable of running at. So we need these little dip switches to tell us what resolution. We've got some multi-purpose, as in multi-sync options here at the top. In terms of video memory, by default it comes with 64 megs, I think. No, 640k of VRAM. And there were definitely 4 separate RAM sockets in 2 different places on the board. So 2 on the left side and 2 on the right. So I'm assuming one of those is RAM and one is VRAM. So hopefully it's been upgraded enough that we can get a moderately high resolution and a reasonable color depth. So I'm going to go for, let's try 1024 by 768. Okay, so what we need is, that's the equivalent of an Apple 19-inch monitor. So we need switch 2 and 3 on, all the others are off. Currently 1 and 2 are on, and everything else is off. So that's 640 by 480, so that is the standard. So we want to turn 1 off and 2 off, and then we want 2 and 3 on. So I need to switch number 2, we'll put number 2 back to on, and number 3 to on. So that should give us, on our VGA monitor, 1024 by 768. Let's see if that works. Okay, for this test we're going to use our standard 19-inch Dell monitor. It's a 1280 by 1024 native resolution, so we're going to be using 1024 by 768, which is a little bit below its native resolution, but it's pretty good at scaling, so you should get a good picture, and you're not going to have to put up with any flicker, so that's really good. Let's see if this adapter I've got works. I've never tested it before. Let's power them both on. I've got a chime. You can hear the drive spinning up. No video signal yet though. So I don't know how this adapter works, whether it works straight away by default or whether you have to wait for the desktop to load before it gives enough information to the Mac to tell it what the resolution of the screen is. I'm not quite sure. But we're certainly not getting a video signal just at this point in time. I can hear the drive spinning. It sounds like it's booting up. The HDI 45 to DB15 cable is quite short and it's a bit inflexible. So it means you can't put the computer right back against the wall. You have to have basically 6 inches before you can connect a cable. And that's a little bit frustrating. It's pretty robust though, and it's got a very nice kind of spring-loaded retention mechanism, which means it won't accidentally fall out. So we're definitely not getting any video signal. Let me have a little tweak. Everything is connected as it's supposed to be. Hey, we have some success. So basically I went through the different combinations and it only seems to work if you put it on the multi-sync modes, at least with this monitor anyway. Using any of the fixed resolutions didn't work. So it does take a little while to load up. I'd be interested to see what resolution it's going to pick. But at least we proved that the principle works. So we've gone from HDI 45 to Apple DB15 via an adapter then to VGA 15. So it looks like we're still in 640 by 480. So it's not letting us change the resolution. So maybe it's not working quite correctly still. We should have the options to change resolutions there. What happens if we reduce the colours? Yep, still doesn't give us anything higher than 640 by 480. So maybe this adapter still isn't working quite right. Okay, there's a distinct VGA/SVGA mode. Switches 4 and 5. No, switches 3 and 4. Let's see if that makes a difference. Doesn't look like it because I can hear the machine booting, but we've got no display output. So yeah, so I can't get this particular adapter to work at anything other than 640 by 480. I'm not sure if that's a limitation of the adapter or the adapter with the HDI 45 cable or this 6166 Power Mac. It could be one or all of those, but we've proved that this little system works. We've shown how the cable works. It's a bit of a relief to see it on an LCD and with no flicker on the screen. So we're going to have a look at this system and restore it in another video. A brief look there at the Power Macintosh 6100 66 megahertz, one of the very first Power PC Macintoshes available. This one looks like it's used in a very specific environment, perhaps to be a little bit of a mail server in an office, which is maybe how it finished its life. I doubt it started its life that way. What we're going to do in a future video is restore that back to stock. But it's a little detour because what we're mainly talking about is this particular connector, the HDI 45, and the fact it was only available on these kind of very early limited range of Power PCs. Apple tried again in 2000 with the ADC, with the Apple desktop connector, trying to get the video signal, power, USB, sound, all in one cable to tidy things up at the back. And I can see why they did that, but unless you can convince the rest of the industry to come along with you, you're probably going to have kind of pushback. So I think that's probably what happened here. All the existing Apple Mac monitors did work with this cable, but if you just had a 6100, you needed that brand new monitor to go with it, and it was only available in 14 inches, and that may not have suited you for doing desktop publishing or whatever. So it's a bit of a shame that that happened, but it's a very interesting bit of Apple history that was repeated again a little bit later. So you will be seeing this machine in a future video, but for now, I think that's what we're going to end this video. If you found it interesting, let me know. If you've got one of those monitors and you actually use an HDI 45 connector natively, then I'd be interested in hearing about that in the comments. For now, that's all. See you in the next video.